Bitcoin Liberty Lab number 50.
Broadcasting into the void for almost a year.
Been almost a year.
Yeah,
It's
running a
Satoshi
little late today because
Nakamoto.
we're BSing about Vegas. So,
Yep. Vegas. April 5th. Satoshi Nakamoto's birthday.
oh yeah, based on his what was that little
It
profile?
was a P2P forum profile. He had put info in there for that.
Yeah, how old is Adam
So,
back?
I don't believe the age year, but there is a cypherpunk whose birthday is April 5th. I'll just
Oh,
leave it at that.
really? Well,
Yep.
let's see what Google says about that.
I I uh, I am anti docs because the man deserves all the success and peace he should have. Um, but a little thread for the freaks out there.
Really?
Anyway, I
I
love it.
still think this is the dude, but whatever.
I'm happy for him. I've always felt the same about it, but I don't need to believe. I just already do.
Yeah,
So we're all Satoshi.
we're all Satoshi. Somebody call Satoshi. See what he's up to. Who's that guy? Some basketball player said he met Satoshi in '93 or something like that.
Oh God, yeah, was it Kobe Bryant or I can't remember. He
Uh,
was sitting next to Sailor, and
yeah,
that's the meme video where Sailor's. I don't know what the purpose of that was, other than
what
here's
you
some
talking
popular
about, Willis?
people.
Yeah,
And so yeah, the basketball players like I think I met him. Blah blah blah. Cypherpunk, whatever, San Francisco, and Sailor is just looking at him like the fuck.
yeah, exactly.
Like
What you
even if
talking
you
about,
have your
Willis?
theory, just the confidence of
I met him.
something,
Yeah,
the swagger of just saying that it's a little fiat. So
it's super fiat. Everybody's so fiat right now, though, dude. Like it's I just
everything's fiat.
posted this thing on X about like engagement farming. Like the more I sit on it, it's hard to read Twitter these days because like I mean, people poke fun at like the tariff thing, like, oh, they one guy's taking off his like geopolitics hat and he's putting on his tariff hat now just because that's the thing in the but it's all just like everything is just like constant engagement farming, dude. Like there's just outrage trolling constantly on both sides. I'm just like, really? This is like someone posted a clip some libtard saying something about like we need to prepare for the streets and you know but the thing is you can very clearly if you have half a brain in your head you can just listen to what she's saying. She's talking about striking, right? Like a picket line. That is the context of the words that she is spitting out. She's not saying go commit acts of terrorism.
Burn stuff. Yeah.
She is saying be prepared for strike conditions as if you're on a picket line. I go, okay. And then someone, like, I think it was Libs at TikTok or somebody was like, oh, this person's calling for violence. I'm like, no, they're not calling for fucking, what are you
I'm
talking?
not against strikes. Yeah.
Well, the thing is like, they do enough crazy shit that you don't need to amplify nonsense because if you amplify the nonsense, it just makes you look as crazy as the people that are saying this, calling Elon Musk a Nazi, right? Like, you
Yeah.
go, do you know what a Nazi is? Because that is not what a Nazi looks like.
Yeah.
There's pictures of Nazis. There's records of things that Nazis did. They don't look anything at all. They don't even remotely resemble Elon Musk. Not even close. And as Elon Musk has pointed out, everything they're doing is publicly
I
auditable.
I haven't. I'm doing accountant work. I have not invaded Poland.
Right. Yeah. I am not rounding up big populations of people. I create a product that people like. And by the way, you guys are bitching about all this stuff on my platform. Like, what are you talking about? So,
Liberals own Teslas, and I own 12% of Teslas. So,
right. Like,
hmm.
what are you people
But
doing?
yeah, when people talk like, okay, they're not on your team, but they're talking about they're exercising their own free speech, or they're talking about striking, or whatever convictions they have, and it's not violent, it's not terrorism. But to say, oh, see, here's another retard, it's like you're diluting your own signal, targeting just anyone who's against your opposite side.
Right.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
100%. Well, I mean, that's like, I was trying to come up with some way to portray this where I go, liberals, Nazi. Like the redefinition of things. Like they go, liberals think that this guy is a Nazi. Meanwhile, conservatives think spray painting a building is terrorism. I'm like, well, last time I checked, like the last big terrorist thing we had was when the Twin Towers fell down. I go, that looks like terrorism to me. If you're gonna like slap a label on something, you go, yeah, that's pretty unmistakably terrorism. That is terrifying. Some blue-haired clown spraying blue paint on a Tesla building or keying a car or even setting fire to the car. I go, well, that's
Big
vandalism.
crime. Yeah.
It's felonious vandalism, but it's vandalism, man. Like, if you're terrified by this, then I think you probably need to step back a little bit, look in the mirror, and go like, what exactly am I terrified of? Not to mention, as best I can tell, based on info that Elon's putting out there, these people are paid to do this shit, right? So you kind of go,
Yeah. I think when the money dries up, a lot of this stuff will fade as well. Um,
well, the thing is, I don't even think it's all that pervasive. Like, go drive down the street and tell me how many
yeah.
people you see picketing or blowing horns or anything. I mean, it's like, well, it was like the Portland riots, right? Or just most things that get amplified in the media. If you go and look boots on the ground, you kind of go, I thought there was riots going on here. Oh yeah, they're like 3 blocks that way. Oh, and then you get there and you go, oh yeah, there's like 3 blocks that have a bunch of people hooting and hollering and doing stupid shit. What about the rest of the city? Oh, it's fine. But if you're like someone in Missouri, you go like, oh my God, Portland's on fire. And it's like, well, this one
Yeah.
like, isolated area in the middle of Portland's got about 50 people running around setting fires and raising hell.
Yeah. There's hot spots, and it brings to mind that, like, I don't know if like big, tight, liberal urban environments are at all ever sustainable. But that's why I don't live there. So
Yeah. Yeah.
if they fuck themselves, well, that sucks, but
Yeah.
bad experiment.
Hmm.
Um, and then, yeah. So, and whenever, like, I remember years ago, I mean, when it was like, whether the left is in charge or the right is in charge, when the speech is not on their side, or if they want to label something terrorism or they label something hate speech, you cross this line of like, you better be real careful with that, because when you're not in power and the other side is, they're like, well, it's same thing.
All
Now
right.
it's just, now you're wanting to pray in public and we don't like that, or, whatever. Just,
Well, there's so much like whataboutism and stuff going around. It's just like,
right.
well, what about this? What about this? What about this time they did this? And it's like, fuck. But I actually asked Grok. I said, hey, Grok, who does more political violence? I mean, I phrased it more academically, to get a objective answer out of Grok. And in terms of like using political violence over the last 50 years, like which side would you say does more? And the thing is Grok highlighted a bunch of stuff I'd kind of forgotten about. Like, you remember like those guys that were, you know, God loves dead soldiers and all that kind of shit.
Oh
That
God, the
Westboro Baptist Church people.
Westboro, yeah.
So they pointed that out. They pointed out a bunch of like abortion clinic bombings and shootings and stuff like that. There is, some of the like anti-Semitic, attacks on like whatever the Jews call their temples or whatever it is. I don't know. And so
Synagogue.
there was like this a pretty decent list, right? Like the Bundy group when they took over the Malheur thing in Oregon, and so and Oklahoma City was obviously a big one. But then Grok somehow tossed in like Ruby Ridge and Waco, and I was like, how? That's not like. And I challenged Grok on it. I said, well, wait a minute, like,
Who were they hurting other than maybe themselves?
yeah, like, well, I mean, the FBI went in and murdered all the
Yeah.
people in the Branch Davidians. They just gunned them down because the optics were so bad.
Yeah.
Uh, and Ruby Ridge was like a bunch of feds went and like trespassed on this guy's property illegally and then shot his wife. So
Yeah, they were trying to infiltrate I guess, a white supremacist group up in that area. Um, oh, what was his name?
Weaver,
Randy Weaver.
yeah,
Yeah, he lived in that area, and they were thinking maybe he was part of them, and then found out he wasn't, but thought that, well, he's a neighbor and they're friendly to him. He's our way in. So
right,
they had a guy pretend he was just a random normie,
right,
with a shotgun, and Randy Weaver did gun armory stuff. and they went to him and they said, "Will you take this shotgun? I want it cut to here on the barrel." And Randy says that would be illegal. And they're
Right.
like, "Yeah, we know, but we just don't. We want to do it right." And he did it. Okay, so he committed a crime. Well,
Yeah.
then they're like, "We got you, and we need you to work for us to infiltrate these guys." And he's like, "Hell no!
Yeah. Go fuck. Yeah.
Leave me alone. I don't want any part of your FBI op."
Yeah.
So they killed him and pretty much his dog and his wife and baby and
Yeah. Well, they
was it
shot
his
his son and his wife.
yeah, sick. It just absolutely sick. So
Yeah. I mean, none of those people have ever been held to account. But it was the point I was getting at though is like when Grok, I said, well, what about the other side now? And Grok left out a bunch of leftist violence that I was sort of like, but if you look at it, like just in terms of public disorder, campaigns of sustained violence against communities and things like that, like the left is like far more violent than the right by a mile. Like the right has its targeted lunatics, like the people that go and shoot up abortion clinics and shit like that, and they do have sort of sporadic things. Uh, but if you want to just talk about sustained campaigns of politically oriented violence, where the left didn't get their way, so they're going to go and burn shit down. They're like, whether it's the Weather Underground or the Black Panther movement or any of this kind of shit, Black Lives Matter, all that stuff. Their core theme is like, we're going to go burn shit down. And so, but to hear them now, like portraying themselves as somehow victims and all this kind of shit, and it's just like, you guys are the most violent people in our country right now by a mile.
yeah, the
So,
state, yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, but it's all state funded, right? Like, so it's sort of like they are just like the ongoing party of Crystal Knocked,
mm,
and yet they will portray themselves as like defenders of democracy and shit. And it's just like you guys are. It's really astonishing. Like, I don't support the right wing violence either. Like, I wasn't a big fan of Bundy taking over the wildlife refuge. I did find it kind of amusing when they had that big standoff in Elko,
Mount
Nevada,
Hero,
or wherever it was, where it was like all the cops show up and said, "You guys need to disperse," and then a bunch of people showed up because they told them to go fuck themselves, and the cops were like,
right?
"All right, well, we'll just leave." I mean, it's I think that sort of fueled the Malheur County thing, but or the wildlife refuge thing. Like, I think it gave them a lot of like, "Hey, we can do this shit now." Um, but I also found it kind of amusing that watching the
Yeah,
cops stand down to something that it's a debatable topic on whether or not those land rights issues they were bitching about were valid or not. But I don't know, man.
right. Yeah, it's a quagmire, and the tentacles run where you don't even expect it at times, and then we find out. Like just I mean, lately various releases. Like there was a CIA document that came out somewhat recently. I think I can't remember the name of it, but oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. But basically, whether it's COINTELPRO, and I mean, Whitley Webb goes into all this kinds of rabbit trail conspiracy stuff,
Right,
but legitimately operations with names that have been have plenty of documentation and admitted the infiltration or just the awareness of okay, the CIA wrote a document that we're concerned that the Black Panthers and white liberals are going to unite, and we'll have a real kind of social upheaval on our hands, and we lose control, or we'll be dealing with more that's not been managed yet.
right,
But anyway, they uh, they don't just get rid of it, but they infiltrate and then manage.
right.
And it
Yeah,
doesn't exactly go away, but it's managed
yeah,
and continued, but in its own way, because it's a tool itself. But anyway, brings me to thinking about big shifts. I guess you'd say politically, but economically. Scott Bessent was on Tucker recently, pretty interesting, and he had he had given a talk like in June where he basically said there's sort of a looming need for a big change and a fix to the debt and the economic formula we have going on right now that's not sustainable.
yeah.
Like we're on steroids and we're looking buff, but our organs are dying.
Right,
And we need like a new Bretton Woods. Even he mentioned like a Treaty of Versailles, kind of a level of big global change, um, shifting the nature of the dollar as the world reserve currency. So on Tucker more recently, he went into some details on that. There's it's a very people are like looking at the tariffs right now, like, oh, tariffs, and the gamemanship of what percent of what.
Right.
But broadly, I hear so many different things where people are like, if if you studied economics, you'd know this is bad. Or if you really studied economics, you'd know this was
This is
good.
good,
Or if
right?
you really study economics, you should know you don't know what to get out of this.
Right.
Um, it regardless, I'm not sure what to make of it other than I don't see any of it hurting Bitcoin. I think most scenarios are like very good for Bitcoin, and perhaps gold, yes, and also that change is afoot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think what they're doing is probably a little haphazard. I would agree with the core sentiment that things have to change. I just don't know, because I've seen some takes where they go, yeah, they're going to get slaughtered in the midterms and all this was for naught kind of thing. And then I see other things where it's like, we're going to bring manufacturing home and all this kind of stuff. And I go, that doesn't, I mean, it's just nonsensical from a purely practical standpoint, right? Like you go, well, how many factories are there in America right now that can churn out things like anything, right? Like I posted in the little group that I'm in on Twitter. There's like some guy's video. It kind of went viral because he was talking about lighters. He goes, "This Zippo lighter costs $25 to make in America. It costs $20 to make in China. If you do this, and $15 goes to China, $5 goes to the guy selling the Zippo, and nobody in America makes any money except for the guy selling the imported Zippo." And I go, well, that's cute. It's a cute story about lighters. It doesn't have any impact whatsoever on the rest of the economy. And I can show you the numbers of an actual importer, me, who is importing goods from overseas, in particular in Taiwan, Bangladesh, and China. And I go, well, to domestically produce the same parts is to treble my cost, right? So then I can't just eat that, right? Because that literally makes it more expensive for me to sell these things than what I'm charging for them right now. And I already think what I charge for them right now is kind of on the high end of what people might expect for this particular product, right? So I go, well, if I triple that, and now my thing becomes like only a very, very select group of people will want to purchase this thing. So I've been looking at things like, well, if I get my own machine, which is also produced in China, that can do the manufacturing for me, and then I have to procure the elements to make these things, and then I have to ramp up and I have to have facilities to do that, and then get the type of accuracy that I'm looking for, and yada yada yada. Like you go, could I produce these domestically? That's always been my goal, but to launch the product with a purely domestic manufacturing standpoint, zero chance. Like I just cannot do it. It is it is financially prohibitive for someone like me to bootstrap something like this. The beauty of the globalized trade system that has been created is people like me can start a small venture right now and see if it and test the waters and see if it will work, which can is the sort of cornerstone of creating value in an economy. If we hadn't had the last 50 years of exporting inflation so we could get cheap goods in return, that might be a different calculus, but we don't live in that world, right? Like our world has 100% been built on top of the idea that we export our inflation so the people at home don't have to feel it, right? They can print a bunch of money, pay for all their stupid social programs and every fuckwit idea that some politician comes up with, but we don't really directly get impacted by that because the cost of our goods keeps coming down because we keep outsourcing it to everywhere but here, right? So people like these little libtard women can go and sit and be a business manager in an office somewhere and do fuck all, create zero value for the economy, and still get paid for it and still have a job and still contribute to the consumption of shit that we're getting for cheap from overseas. But it doesn't,
Hmm.
there's that goes away if you try and quote unquote balance the trade, right? Like there is no manufacturing here. There is no company that's going to start making Zippo lighters on the scale that the Chinese factory is. There is no company that's going to make your iPhones that fast. There's, like all the everything that people take for granted right now goes exponentially higher in cost if
Yeah.
you try and onshore it, and it's going to take you a few years just to get to the point where they can have that capacity. So either the US consumer pays for those tariffs directly, because if you're an importer, you have to pass that on. You can't just go like, "Oh, we'll just fucking eat it." I mean, if you're running a 10% profit margin and your taxes go up by 30%, you don't just go, "Well, let's just run at a 20% deficit so we can keep our customers." You go,
Right.
it just doesn't work, right?
Yeah, I can see big companies or manufacturers that, okay, headline type news where a plant reopens or they build a new one, or they pick a different country, and all that could be good for the U.S. But a lot of the gig economy and what we're used to getting for cheap from offshore all changes kind of quick. And so, just thinking about uh, you know your type of situation, or with the microseed, little stuff where it's like trying to bootstrap something new or get your feet off the ground, instead of like, well, let me engage with another country, cheap and easy to test something out and see how this works and get it started and then go from there. If you're looking at just domestic, it's a different cost, different set
It's
of
impossible. It's
resources.
literally
Yeah.
impossible. And one of the things that I think people grossly underestimate, especially if they're not importing products or buying products from overseas or something like that, is the level of service and the way you can get stuff done over there is absolutely astonishing. I mean, it's night and day different. Like when I first started the microseed experiment, I went to a domestic producer, right? And I said, I'm going to try my damnedest to get this all done here in America, make sure that it's American companies. I want to go with local businesses. I went to a machine shop in Vancouver, Washington, and said, hey, man, well, let's do this and this and this.
It's
That guy
expensive.
overcharged the shit out of me, sent me faulty fucking stuff. I had to go back and forth with this guy for weeks. And then when I finally realized, like, hey, dude, you charged me like 10 times more than what this costs, he just fucking ghosted me. And I'm like, well, why the fuck would I ever want to mess with someone like you? I call a Chinese factory, I go, hey, I need this change, this change, this change. They go, okay, cool, no problem. Like this. And like literally 10 minutes later, they'll send me a picture of the exact thing I was asking for. And I go, yeah, exactly like that. What's that going to take? Oh, we can have it ready in, 15 days and we'll ship it by sea or air. And it's just like this very, knock wood so far, painless process to deal with these companies. And when I look at it, I go, well, they're doing pretty good. They're making money. They can, take advantage of their economies of scale and state subsidies that they're getting, and undercutting all this American manufacturing, yada yada yada. But when you start dealing with American manufacturers, you go like, I ordered from that, like I said, from that one machine shop. Order was wrong. It was late. I had to go back and forth with them constantly. Like I was pointing out offline, when I first ordered some of these parts, everything came in great, right? This last order I got was just an absolute catastrophe. Like the specs were wrong, the packaging was bad out of this whatever factory had produced the little spindle devices. Everything was damaged. It was all screwed up. I said, hey man, this is a problem. They go, okay, we'll just send you some new ones right now. What do you want me to do with the old ones? Just keep them. Okay. Well, what about the fact that these are damaged? Oh, we'll give you a $300 credit too. Okay, cool. So now, I it's such a different experience, and I
They're
kind of
working with
appreciate.
you.
Well, I just appreciate they're sort of like they're so much closer to like what a free market would really look like for products. Like if they hadn't have buried the United States and all this regulatory shit and employment laws and rules about working and insurance requirements and yada yada yada, I think it would still be the same here. Like that's what made America great. America used to be like China, where you could just go, hey, I want to make a pot, and they go, yeah, no problem, and they'll just spin it up for you, and they'll figure it out, and they'll make it work, and they'll make it cheap, and make it so the company that's producing makes a little money, the reseller makes a little money, the wholesaler might make a little money. Everyone got it in a little chain, but now they've butchered that, and Americans have been all too happy to accept that exchange. They go, well, I don't have to work in a factory anymore. No, you can just go sit in an office somewhere and push email all day and make it feel like you're actually contributing to something. But in reality, you just have a bullshit job. It's just a make work job. So you can earn enough money so you can feed back into the consumer economy that we've created, you know.
Yeah. Matthew Cratter just put up a new video called "Is the Global Reset Here?" And I think that's kind of what's on people's minds is like there's a broad change happening. Uh, I mean, you could geostrategically, I don't know what's necessarily good or bad about it, other than I think if it's going to affect the dollar as a reserve currency, or if the markets are down, or if people are looking for, well, where do I find a safe harbor? You see gold moving a lot still. If you're paying attention and aren't head stuck in the sand, Bitcoin. I just think Bitcoin would be the direction people go. So as the markets have dropped, that's another discussion happening. A discussion point about the decoupling happening is that stocks and other markets are going down, while Bitcoin, yeah, I mean it's down from its highs, but it's stayed flat or even gained a little. You see MicroStrategy up, and then what's GameStop? Like,
12% or something.
yeah, it's like okay, because it's Bitcoin now.
Right.
That's just interesting. I don't know what that necessarily means, other than Bitcoin and maybe decoupling from the larger market factors, because maybe people paying attention that have the money get it at some
Maybe.
level.
Yeah. I think this has happened in the past too, though. You know, they go, "Oh, look, it's like
Decoupled from Nasdaq. Yeah,
yeah," and then all of a sudden, like 3 months later, it's like, "Oh, well, that correlation came back. Oops," you know. So
yeah,
who knows what's going to happen in the future? I mean, it would be great to think that Bitcoin actually is decoupling. I don't think there's enough people that actually physically hold Bitcoin right now to make that case solid. But it's possible, certainly.
yeah.
The thing is like as we were discussing last week, the vast majority of large holders of Bitcoin don't treat it the same way as the small holders do, right? Like you and I look at it and go, I've got sovereign property rights. I've got a very important, valuable, scarce asset here. For the multimillionaires and the billionaires that are sort of flinging this stuff around, um, what's that? The use of libtard and insulting the efforts of white collar workers. Yeah,
I need a little context for that one.
yeah. A little context would be helpful, but the the thing I was getting at is like when these large players are tinkering with Bitcoin, I don't think they look at it with quite the same lens that someone like I do or you do or the sort of rest of the lower level plebs that are dealing with Bitcoin and things like that. So it's hard to say when the big players will sort of get on board with the idea of like, yeah, this is something that is scarce valuable and something that should be kept securely rather than something that trades and should be traded for fiat gains or fiat losses or whatever.
Hmm. Yeah, sometimes we get a little colorful with our language here. That's
Yeah, that's
I
a
get
fair
it.
point, skate boy. I mean, you're absolutely right to call that out. Like I admit it is a bit inflammatory, um and probably needlessly so. And I still, recoil at some of the behavior that I see from some of those sides. So, in terms of the white collar worker stuff, like there's a great book by David Graeber. Uh, it was bullshit jobs is sort of the crux of the book, and I kind of agree with his core thesis. And I've cited Mr. Graeber a lot in the past, especially his work around debt. And like when I was doing my finance degree, his book was so eye opening to me because it was the first time I'd ever seen something that was laid out in a way that really challenged a lot of like mainstream narratives around economics, macroeconomics. And I guess the most illuminating thing was he had said that whole Adam Smith story about, oh, yeah, of course, man, happy to. But the thing Graeber said that sort of stopped me in my tracks because it was like a little throwaway article my professor had sent out, and I looked at it and it said that whole story about like barter became evolved into money and credit and debt and all that kind of stuff. He said it's just a myth. Like you can ask any archaeologist, they go, we have no evidence of any society on Earth ever developing this way. And it kind of stopped me because my reflex was to dismiss it and go, yeah, that's nonsense. Everybody knows the Adam Smith story or whatever. But, I for to give myself some credit, I kind of paused, looked at it and said, okay, I need to learn more about what this guy is saying. And so it's a lot of his work. I actually got to meet him when I was at the LSC, and he was a really fascinating guy, pretty cool dude. He was one of the orchestrators of the Occupy Wall Street movement, and I was, sort of a fanboy. But yeah, that the whole white collar thing, it's not necessarily to crap on their heads about what it is they're doing. It's more to crap on the entire system itself that says, hey, some of these jobs are worthwhile, because the vast majority are not, in any meaningful sense. Like the actual productive work is happening overseas, and people here are shuffling paper to manage the actual productive work, which sort of ties into my earlier point. But to your point,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. I shouldn't be calling people libtards, because it is derogatory and unnecessary. And like I said,
Maybe it's lazy style of rhetoric. I
it is
find
a
my
very lazy style of rhetoric.
I find myself when I'm trying to like there's all this stuff going on and I'll have my viewpoints or angle on it. And when I'm trying to distill like what is this like faction of belief system or what is that over there or whatever, and I'll find myself using like the word communist or communism, just because it's simple. It's a hatchet job of a word, but I'll be trying to like articulate what is all that, because for me it's like they say it's not necessarily it's not left and it's not right, it's you and the state.
Right.
What did it say? Um,
There is no red, there is no blue, there is the state, and there is you. That's
yes,
Walker.
that's the quote.
That's
And
straight
so
from
people
Walker.
are like they when it gets political, you got your horses in the race and it's left or right or red and blue. And I'll be like, it's a whole system. It's a state. Call it the deep state. Is it populism versus statism? And I'll get lazy and I'll call it communist when it's not. Or people will say Marxist, but then it's not just Marxist. It's big moneyed oligarchical. You could say, oh, it's fascist corporatism. And on the other hand, you could say it's this fascist Marxism. And I'll use words. And what I'm trying to get at is something that we're delving into kind of a new awareness on what is this tentacled octopus.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Well said.
but yes.
Well, I mean, it reminds me of like I have to really check myself, especially when I'm reading X, because the algorithm has now funneled me into the right wing bubble, right? And so it's hard for me. I find I still have to sit there and go, wait, hold on, because I feel those emotional reactions. That is what that algorithm, all these media algorithms are designed for, is to invoke reaction, right? So I find myself going, oh, I can't believe those people are doing, and I have to step back and go, wait a minute, hold on, you just pump the brakes there, Punchy. I need to take a look at a broad picture thing, because I came from a very, like I worked in the entertainment industry for 20 years, and you are 100% socketed in the liberal bubble in that world, right? Or at least the left wing bubble. And, but the thing is I have enough wisdom to go, there's merit to both sides, because you can't just say, well, this side is the right side and that side is the wrong side, because there's reasons why conscientious people buy into the narratives on both sides. And what's happening now is that those conscientious impulses are being co-opted by these algorithms to drive towards disgust and outrage, because it's the most profitable thing on both sides. And it always has been. I mean, you can go back to the yellow journalism from the 1920s or whatever. Like getting people stirred up and pissed off is a great way to sell newspapers. It's a great way to sell Tide soap on your cable news channel, and it's a great way to get engagement farming going on X or Meta or wherever. So it's
Yeah.
just tough to maintain any air of neutrality or just some balance, and even stuff like you know calling people libtards or whatever, I think is a function of like that's my dopamine system has been hijacked, and I'm starting to buy
It's
into it.
cathartic.
Yeah, but I'm
Well,
buying into that, like, oh, I gotta libtards, so I appreciate you calling that out, like, and I don't want to just sit here and natter on about that kind of stuff. And yet it's good because it reminds me like, yeah, I got to check myself here because I am very vehemently opposed to getting into partisanship, and I'm finding myself drifting towards that inadvertently sometimes. So thank you.
My context with my parents when they were in their teens and 20s, and Vietnam was going on, and I mean, what were they to do uh, as say hippies or wannabe hippies or whatever? Like how do you fight against something like the CIA and the Vietnam War, the FBI and assassinations and all that? So the whole movement was happening, and that got you know melded in with drugs, sex, rock and roll. If I was living back then, I don't know if I would have done any better necessarily, but I get the angst, I get the movement, I get the emotion behind it. Nowadays, when you see some of the modern stuff, um, it's not like I disagree with the emotion. It's just when it's misdirected or also so insulated from any real life hardship. It's like, yeah, it's easy to criticize.
Yeah, Travis, what's up, brother? Well,
Travis
yeah, I
and
mean, yeah, I agree with you. Like the libs
hey,
definitely
bud.
are very status state oriented, and I would also point to the neocons for the last 30 or 40 years. They are not exactly like pro freedom.
Yeah,
The thing I think is most remarkable about the politics of the last probably 20 years or something like that is like I was part of the Ron Paul camp back in the day, like in the 80s and 90s. And I was like, yeah, libertarianism in the Congress. And, I loved Ron Paul. I thought he was great. Right. And what was sort of funny is like the libertarian wing sort of co opted the party somewhere along the line. So now you've got a bunch of these like libertarian sort of leaning people. I don't think they're fully on board with like libertarian ideals or whatever, but they at least espouse some of those notions publicly, and they're not just outright mocked for it. But they kind of destabilize the entire Republican Party, right? Whereas on the other side of the aisle, the party apparatus that's in control of the Democratic Party and the Democratic National Committee and all that kind of stuff, they have very very tight reins on that, as you can see, because they are holding those reins so tight, they're driving their
they
wagon
shut
into.
out Bernie and anyone that doesn't fit the
Yeah,
big money.
and the Republicans had lost their grip on their reins. So this is where Trump came from and all this kind of stuff. But
I'm starting to see a little bit of fractioning on the right. That I think people presume certain things about Trump, and they're starting to see. So there's aspects of what Israel is doing that is causing some fraction. There's things about even with COVID and RFK Jr. and Maha, where
yeah,
it's like, if he's not going to just crush and kill the COVID vax and the pharmaceuticals, he is effectively controlled opposition. Um, so I,
yeah,
or he's blackmailed. Could RFK Jr. be blackmailed right now? There's some weird stuff out there going on.
yeah. Well, that Ian Carroll guy came out with some big.
Yeah, he was on Candace Owens, and they're talking about that. And
Yeah.
I don't know what to believe, but I mean, I believe it's a blackmail autocracy at times. It's probably hard to navigate.
Oh yeah, certainly. Well, like as I've pointed out, like people, I see a lot of people getting real bent out of shape about, oh, they haven't released the Epstein list. I'm like, how can you be so naive? Like, it seems so patently obvious to me. Like if there was any political gain from either side by releasing that list, they 1000% would have like released that ages ago to go like, look at all these Republicans that are out diddling kids in Florida, or look at all these Democrats diddling kids in Florida. I think what happens every time someone looks at that list is they go, ooh, 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 we can't. Oh, yeah, that's like it'd be
They're
cool,
in power now.
but that guy is kind of like our buddy, and so they just
Yeah.
sit on their hands.
His daughter is the head of DOJ.
Oops. Yeah.
Mm.
Oh, we can't. Oh, we shouldn't. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like it's absurdly obvious, but I think it should be like a great big flashing warning sign to go like, hey, it doesn't matter. Like the Walker quote, there is no red, there is no blue, there is the state, and there is you. That is the state, and those people are deeply compromised by that list. Every single one of them, or like I said, they would have released it a long time ago. So you have to be highly suspicious of folks, anybody that's sort of espousing a thing, any sort of strong opinion about anything the other side is doing, because you kind of go, yeah. But to your point,
Well,
Fred, that whole, there's so many things like the right is getting tangled up on, like Israel. You go, hmm.
I think
But
we need.
too, like they don't,
Yeah, I don't like the politics, but I think there needs to be unity at some level to keep chipping away at the armor of what's been the problem. Uh, that said, what is real? I think it's such a dark and tangled thing. I don't know if you can just say, "Oh, this is it," and that
right.
it's
Yeah,
hard
you
to keep an eye on.
pull that one thread and the whole sweater falls apart. Yeah, I don't think that exists.
Right. We'll keep going until it's all fixed, and it's like, well, you may find that it's turtles all the way down. I don't
It's
know.
all the way down.
We didn't have an actual revolution and start over, so we're trying to unthread from the top down, and there's always another. There's another turtle. Oh, look, there's
Right.
another turtle. So
Well,
it's
I mean,
and
that's part of the problem with complexity, right? Is like I remember it was a few years ago. Like you've probably heard the McDonald's story, like the lady that spilled coffee on her lap, and
sure.
and she is a pariah to this day. Like people will just absolutely hammer fuck that lady because
Their
they're
coffee has always been too hot. I've always
yeah,
thought their coffee's too hot.
yeah. Well,
It
the
is.
thing is like if you look at that was the poster child for a thing that was called tort reform, right? Where people were going
Hmm.
all around the world, all around the country, and this was all led by industry going, we need to reform tort laws, and partly the medical industry as well. Like the doctors going, hey, we don't want to get sued for when we accidentally leave a scalpel in your stomach. Sorry about that. And so they started capping damage awards and things like that. And it was really funny to watch because there were a lot of these like staunch proponents of like we need to cap tort reform, and people are taking advantage of lawsuits and this and that and the other thing, and it's all just this narrative bullshit, right? But I remember, I can't remember what state the guy was from, but he was like this huge proponent of tort reform, and then he got into a car crash and he got all kinds of mangled, and there was like obvious like issues with the equipment that was in the vehicle and the other person that caused the crash, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and ended up needing millions of dollars of like medical treatment, this, that, and the other thing. And then they said, oh, no, no, your tort claims are capped at $250,000. And he said, but wait, wait, wait. I'm not one of those people that's trying to take advantage of the system. I'm one of the people that's legitimately hurt by this tort claim. And they go, well, that's what you asked for. You got it, buddy. And so I think there's that, like, there's a reason for everything that happens right now. There's somewhere, somehow, if there's some law you disagree with or the environmental regulations, like all this stuff, you can look at it and go, yeah, this is obviously bloated. It's obviously out of control. It's obviously crazy. And it got there for a reason. It didn't just get there because someone just came up and said, hey, let's just make things as complicated and clusterfucked as possible. It's a gradual process of like, well, this guy got squished by a pallet of shit at Home Depot. So maybe we should put up little flags at Home Depot to make it so people can't walk under this thing, et cetera, et cetera. But same thing with torts. They go like, well, who pays for damage? And you go, well, we need to have tort reform. Well, then you incentivize people to just like build shit that can break on you, cause you all kinds of injury. They get to profit, you get to suffer, and they don't have to pay for it. And you go, well, that doesn't seem fair. But then how far do you take it the other direction? And that's that little weird balancing act that just takes forever to sort out. So when it comes
Yeah.
time to like Doge, like we're gonna unwind all this shit, you go, well, you've got a hefty thing in front of you. And to Musk's point, he goes, well, we're just targeting like the most egregious like shit that you go, this is obviously nonsense, but it's obviously also going to give a lot of political, capital to the other side to fight with you about. So who knows?
Yeah.
It's a
It.
complex world. Just buy Bitcoin. It's
Yeah.
easy.
I know. It's like you want to respect people's needs and protect them, and at the same time, like how dumb are we? My daughter's discovered she likes peanuts, and I'm getting some peanuts out for her this morning. And on the jar of peanuts, there's a warning that says it contains peanuts. And then and we're not allowed to. It literally, like, warning, contains peanuts. Like,
Right.
you freaking bought peanuts,
Yeah.
the hyperallergenic stuff, and we are not allowed per school rules to send a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with our son to
Right.
school.
Yeah.
Can't have peanut butter, and it's just like, well, I mean, I get it, and I like, I don't know, it's crazy. On the economic end, though, I mean, what do you have a view or an opinion on where things may be going with the tariff thing or the de-dollarization or the shift in things economically?
I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of people dooming it. And I think doomers are inevitably proven wrong throughout history. People have been calling for the collapse of society, the end of the world, everything is going to melt down. That's not to say it hasn't happened, like World War II, pretty good, pretty sizable event that caused a lot of chaos and damage. But if you look at the grand scheme of things, you kind of go, well, most of the time those people don't end up being right, like. And there was something like Peter St. Onge put out. He's talking about population collapse, and this and that. But in the 1970s, it's the same argument that the climate people make on either side. In the 1970s, there were all these books about like the coming population bomb and all this kind of stuff. And we're going to be overpopulated. It's going to gobble up all Earth's resources. We're all going to die. And then now it's 20 years later. It's like, oh my God, population is collapsing. Nobody's having babies. We're all going to die. And it's like, well, that's all potentially true in a very fiat mindset, but it also sort of overstates and underestimates like people just kind of deal with shit and adapt, and it's like when we talk about the tariffs and the money and the monetary system and what's going to happen and this and that and the other thing, I go, well, there's this strongly vested interest in maintaining global trade, right? This isn't 1870. This isn't like, well, it takes 3 months for a ship of ingots to come over so you can make your nails or whatever. This is a highly efficient, digitized global supply chain thing where everybody benefits a little bit and nobody's really making out super well except at the sort of top end, right? So, what's the likelihood that everyone's going to go, let's just shut all this down and go back to trying to figure out how to make ingots at home? Like, I just don't think, I think there's so much, incentive for people to try and keep it going, regardless of who's parroting what party line about this, that, and the other thing. The only people that seem to be really hell bent on destroying this whole setup are the Europeans because they're just like gunning for World War III. And our sort of liberal wing in the previous administration, like where you had these like liberal senators like signing bombs to Ukraine and stuff, going, "Hey, we're signing bombs going to Russia." It's like, what are you doing? Weren't you the party of peace and no war? And now you're like, you're the new neo.
Right. We were fighting Vietnam, and now we're
Yeah,
fighting Russia.
now you're pro like let's send some extra JDAMs that way. So, but the point being is now I think with the rise of populism and stuff like that, I think people are kind of writ large are growing tired of that agenda, which is seemingly, I don't know, I don't have any evidence that says people are pushing for World War III, but their actions sure seem to align with this notion of like, hey, we're trying to incite World War III.
Well,
So
maybe war is not where the profits are. Maybe it's uh, you know people want to make money, and it's going to have to be economic. Trade is right there. Um, I don't know how they Skateboy raises another good point, but I do think they're
yeah,
like I said this last week. I think they're going to have to print at some point to for liquidity or for other reasons. I don't see
oh,
how
yeah,
they don't print. I
yeah,
don't see how Trump's already putting pressure on Powell to drop interest rates, and they've stopped their quantitative tightening. Now that's not exactly quantitative easing, but that's sort of on the horizon. And um, smart people with their wealth, there's a lot of wealth out there, and it's going to seek a safe harbor. Yeah, there's gold. Germany wants their gold back from the U.S. and others. France can.
what gold?
France is Europe, maybe those in charge in Europe don't like Trump and are going to fight, but they're also going to have to trade. They're going to have to make money. I don't know how that plays yet. Money will seek Bitcoin. I think money will print. Hard assets will benefit.
Yeah,
Bitcoin is the hardest and best
yeah,
portable asset.
by a mile. Well, I think you nailed it though, Skateboy. Like, I think you're absolutely right. I think that's precisely what I was getting at. Somewhere along the line, they're going to find some middle ground. They're going to find some way to keep the little fiat game going, and they're going to keep kicking that can as long as they can, as hard as they can, until it just physically can't be kicked anymore. Like back in the 2000s, I was predicting the demise of the dollar, and the whole global economy is going to collapse and yada yada yada. 20 years later, I was sitting there going like, maybe I should stop chicken littling now and just kind of accept that, like, this thing's going to have legs until it doesn't. And when it doesn't, it's going to suck for a couple of years and then people will figure shit out again, right? Like,
Yeah.
people don't, it's like if you got locked out of your house and you didn't have the keys. most people won't just sit down and go, well, I guess I need to die outside now. Like I can't get in my house. Like you'll figure something out, right? Even if it's a bad idea, you'll figure out, like you go, all right, I'm just going to smash the door down. Well, then you got a new problem that you created by trying to solve your last problem. But it doesn't mean you won't come up with a solution. The only question we have before us is like, what solutions are they going to come up with, and how bad is it going to fuck us? Because on some
Yeah.
level, the people at the bottom are going to get hosed out of all of this. It doesn't matter which way they go. Um, but yeah, to Fritz's point, yeah, they're going to print. They can't.
Never underestimate the power of the printer. I was
Yeah,
just thinking 20, I think it was like 20 years ago, I could not believe that the Federal Reserve was just printing like $1 billion a month out of nothing.
yeah,
And then it became like in the, 15 billion dollars a month anymore. It's like I lose track of how many trillions it is.
yeah.
But just add a digit and keep printing. And
Right.
so back then I was like, it's got to collapse. They can't keep doing this. They can't keep doing this. Another decade goes by. This
Oh,
cannot sustain itself. They
right.
cannot keep doing this. Another decade goes by.
Yeah,
They're trying, but no, they have to. I think
yeah,
we've built this body on steroids. We're trying to eat healthier and maha the organs that are rotten inside of us, but got to maintain our steroid body
yeah.
here.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Flex our muscle in the
Well, I would point out, like in 2008, they wanted to do the TARP bailout, and
mm,
that created an absolute shitstorm because they were talking about $800 billion. They go like, "Oh my god!" Like they had to call emergency meetings with the president and get Congress in at 12 o'clock and midnight or whatever, and all this backdoor shenanigans and running around like chickens with their heads cut off because they're talking about $800 billion bailout. Right? Today, people throw 800 billion around like it's like $800. Like they just go, oh well, it's 2 trillion here, trillion over here, 2 trillion. It's just like, I mean, it kind of reminds me like when you go to buy a house, right? And you go like, oh, my budget is 250,000. They go, well, for 275, you can get one of these over here, and then you go, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. And but for another 290, you could get this thing, and the next thing you know, you're talking about a house is like $525,000, and you're like, yeah, I can afford that because of this.
there's 60-year mortgages. You could get a 60-year mortgage, and when you
Yeah,
approach death, just do an inverse mortgage.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, but I mean, after a while, the whole purpose of the real estate agent is to disconnect you from the reality of what that money means. Because you walk into that office going like, I feel like based on all the math and shit I've been thinking about for the last 3 months, I can afford a $250,000 house and I'd be comfortable with that. And their entire goal is to get you to disconnect from that reality and remove any semblance of connection to what $250,000 actually means, so they can ratchet you up into a 400,000, 500,000, 600,000, whatever dollar house, where you can start convincing yourself like, oh yeah, well, what's the difference between 250 and 300,000? But if you just step back for a second and went like, hey man, if you just had like 50 grand sitting around right now, would you just want to like vaporize that for nothing? They go, oh no, I'd want to keep that. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's just they're manipulating you into stretching that 50,000 out over 30 years, and trying to get you to not notice that it's 50 grand or 100 grand. But that's the same thing we've done with these bailouts and the budgets now. 800 billion was like eye watering back in 2008. Today it's like, oh, whatever. That's just like the
Yeah.
budget of the Defense Department. So what?
Well,
Nobody.
and like Jack Mullers has made a consistent point for a long time, is that uh, Trump wants a weaker dollar. A lot of interests want a weaker dollar. It dilutes the debt. Um, so they want a weaker dollar. Now I
Yeah,
think they're looking at different benefits on the other in other areas because of that, but it all trends to dollar down, debt manageable, I guess if you call it that, and frankly, Bitcoin up.
yeah.
So
Nothing stops this train, man. Like
yeah, it doesn't.
they're in deep. But it's the same. Like if I gave you a credit card and said you have an unlimited credit line, but you have to figure out how to service the interest, right? There are some people that would responsibly manage that credit line. And I think a healthy percentage of people would just abuse the shit out of it, right? And they would end up finding themselves in a place where they have to be borrowing money just to service their interest. And that's sort of position that most Western economies are barreling towards as quickly as they possibly can, and they've sort of shot themselves in the foot. With like 2008 and 2020, they could have just let everything reset, but that's not a great way to stay in power, right? Like that's a great way to lose power, and if it gets bad enough, it's a great way to lose your head. But uh, so now that they've sort of shot themselves in the foot twice, you're gonna go, well, you guys don't have any feet left, so what's left? They go, well, just keep doing what we can't. There's no other way out of this. We're gonna dilute everything until we are on the chopping block, and yeah, and so that net, you go, well, just buy a hard asset because they can't inflate it. Like it seems
Yeah.
pretty straightforward, right? So yeah,
Yeah. Satoshi, happy birthday, Satoshi. He had a quote that, and it's a paradigm shift for a lot of people. You just think, oh, no, no, central powers, governments, they issue money. That's how it works. How else does it work? And Satoshi said that, money should not be issued by any government.
yeah,
Um, Money should function for people and not be, not to say all regulation is bad, but when it comes to money, if you have the right money, um, let it be a tool and not a let it be a tool for the people and not a tool against the people.
yeah,
Which is all we've ever known. We're in like a Stockholm syndrome, like I've said, where it's the air we breathe, so we just think that's how it works. That there is no other alternative.
right,
Money needs to be regulated. It's got to be tightened and eased for us,
yeah,
Daddy, Mommy, and Daddy. Will you tighten and ease my bed sheets every night?
yeah.
And no, the right money simply works.
Yeah. Well, I can guarantee you, if we actually ended up on a true sound money standard, I think, well, that's sort of the thesis of my book. Like, what that looks like, I think, is going to be very shocking to most people. Like, I don't think people are really ready for what that really looks like. And I definitely don't think it looks like you go to the Gap and you have like this selection of clothes that 90% of them are going to end up in some landfill in Africa. Like, I think it looks like a very, very different world, and it's certainly not going to be a consumption based society, as
Yeah.
best I can tell. I think it's going to be something where productivity is going to trump and savings are going to trump, and but that looks very different than row houses and cheap cars and cheap electronics and throwaway plastic shit and continual replacement of junk. Like I think it fundamentally alters what humanity exists like under a competitive market system. So we'll see.
Yeah, the psychology that money's burning a hole in your pocket, it's losing value. Spend it. It's good for the GDP. We need consumerism. Our whole economy is based on a kind of a throwaway, upgrade, planned obsolescence society. So buy more. Christmas, more presents, more stuff. Train your kids. The great realignment being like a shift towards what, not to
Don't do
say
that. Yeah.
it's not austerity or any kind of austerity fascism, like um, like a watermelon, green on the outside, save the planet, but it's red on the inside. Um, it's not austerity for the wrong reasons, but just sustainable low time preference lifestyle.
Yeah.
Like what do you need and what's quality, and not like, well, I bought this cheap piece of crap, it's broken, I'll buy another one. Oh, they got
Right.
version 3 now. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the great realignment just sort of shifting a lot about time preference and incentives.
Yeah.
Um,
And just trying real hard to picture what that world looks like, because I honestly can't. Like when I think about it, I go like, man, what does that look like? Like what would the world have looked like if we had had Bitcoin 2,000 years ago? You go, man, you can't even imagine it, right? Because you go
yeah.
like, a lot of the technological advancements and things we've done come from a fiat mindset, right? Like
Yeah,
trying
you
to
wouldn't be.
push that envelope so you can be profitable, because that's what the core of the thing is, right? So
Yeah, Saifedean's book sort of imagines 100 years ago a gold standard, and the ability to, you know, the Wright brothers move gold and all that. It's a thought experiment, that, but I imagine you imagine that. So okay, um, you can't just print money and go wage war. You can't just print money and bail out your buddies. You can't just print money and force certain areas of the economy that are to the benefit of whatever directions you want to take things. So yeah, it's more of a natural phenomenon. You can also, economists could throw away the Keynesian garbage and start applying like true measurable science to economics, where the money is more of a static factor and the functions of economies within, using that money are now making sense versus um, animal spirits or other the whims of politics.
Yeah. Well, it would be certainly become more quantifiable, I think. But the problem with economists is they've been sort of trying to wrap their humanities topic in mathematics for a long time, trying to quantify the unquantifiable. And it takes heroic assumptions to get any of their models to work, including the Austrians. And one of the big principal arguments against the Austrians, they go, well, it's all theoretical. Like, you guys can't model any of this. You just go, well, we think, and it's a valid complaint, right? And yet you can also look at it and go, well, but they also present logical arguments. So you know the entire field of economics is sort of kind of an iffy practice as far as I'm concerned. But but they
Maybe
do
we can get.
little like micro shit. They can talk about like trade imbalances between like exporters of hammers and importers of hammers, like me. They can apply some model to my situation and go, yeah, well, obviously this guy's going to charge more for hammers, and based on this input, this output, this tariff charge, and he might has to pay for shipping, and then the back and forth he's got to do with FedEx to try to figure out what was supposed to be tariffed on. We predict that he will charge more for his hammers in 6 months from now.
Yeah. Well, and
Comics.
yeah, I remember a little economics in high school and in college, and thinking like, no, not for me. Like I just, different mindset. But when I read Seyfedin's Principles of Economics book, I'll get inspired, or maybe it's the coffee, but I'll be reading Principles of Economics based on other stuff we've all been talking about for years,
Yeah.
and I'll be like, oh, I should have been in economics, and because I love that version of economics where
Right. Well, it's
it
Austrian
it
school,
could
right?
be science, it could be a science.
Yeah. 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 Well, I mean, I appreciate Safadine, and it's kind of cool
Oh,
to see a resurgence of the Austrian school modernly, but
I was going to mention,
yeah,
yeah, I I was thinking of him. He's been posting a lot lately. He thinks this tariff stuff is horrible. He
yeah,
does not like Trump's tariffs.
yeah. Well, what's funny though is like Peter St. Onge on the other side, who is also an Austrian. He's a Rothbardian Austrian, Murray Rothbard fan. He's been sort of like, yeah, tariffs could work out pretty good, So it's sort of like even amongst the Austrians, they can't get their thing sorted out. I mean, it's all the thing is it's such a complex system. You can't just alter inputs willy nilly and not expect, you know, like it's the cornerstone of the butterfly effect. Like these little inputs can have profound changes that you don't necessarily understand how they're going to manifest or why, right? So we'll see what happens. I mean, they're kind of nudging things this way and that, but like for all the people bitching about the tariffs today, I go, how many of you were cheerleaders for bailing out banks for making bad bets? Like we need to bail out the banks to save the system. Okay, well now we're going to change tariffs. They go, oh, you can't do that because that's going to, where's your incentive lie? Like you didn't mind massively disrupting the global economy during the financial crisis. You certainly didn't massively or mind massively fundamentally altering and destroying every semblance of what a global economy looks like during the lockdowns, where you just go, hey,
Hmm.
everybody just don't go to work and we're just going to print our way through it. You go, you don't think that was a big shift in the way global trade occurs? Like clearly that's, but people were just on board with just, well, we'll run this experiment all day long. But Trump says, hey, we're going to raise taxes. And you go like, ah, so everyone starts having a freaking heart attack. And it's like, come on, dude. Like you guys literally just quadrupled the global monetary supply in a year. I
Hmm.
think we can try taxes. Like I think there's a pretty good argument to be made that we can try raising import taxes and see what happens. So I don't think it's going to be seamless. But the difference between printing your way through COVID and taxing your way through trying to rebalance trade or set up some new global Bretton Woods or whatever the hell they're trying to do right now. The difference with the COVID is they get to bribe you first. They go, here's some free money, and people go, hey, free money's cool. I like free money. Yay, free money. Whereas this one, they're going to go like, hey, what do you mean I can't afford to buy an iPhone anymore? So there's a little different expectation. But who knows? Maybe Doge will come along and cut us all $10,000 checks, and then we're going to go tariffs, yay! And they won't even know why. They just know they got a $10,000 check from somebody somewhere for some reason.
I
So
hate to say, not that I hate free money, but I hate to say that as cynical as I was and kind of a corner that I turned when we got these COVID checks. Now, granted, I'm an essential worker and I'm working anyway, and I got to show
yeah,
up anyway, and I got to deal with as much or more of the shit from ever before.
yeah,
But no, I have a job that actually, like, does stuff. So I'm still working, but then we get a random check and I'm like, oh, everybody kind of gets this. Like, and what is this for? Like, where's this coming from? I hate to say that, like, okay, so Doge saves so much money or whatever, and we all get like a check out of that. Not that I'm not paying taxes. I mean, okay, so yeah, I paid taxes that went to what, I could argue about that, but I pay my taxes. I get a check. Part of me is like, hmm, I can't help but see the politics of that or what the worth or value is. I mean, maybe it's an injection back into the economy. Okay. For me, it's probably Bitcoin, but still, I get so I get kind of cynical when it comes to that kind of stuff. Um,
yeah.
like,
Well,
hey,
rightfully
we found some money squirreled away that was, ridiculous fraud, waste, and abuse. And we're going to shave off a little bit and give everyone a little bit of money to remind them that we did this stuff and to, reward them for the taxes they paid that went to bullshit.
so.
Um, okay, cool. But is this paying off kind of like political goals, or is this fixing a system? I want the
Oh, it's just
system.
bribery, dude. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
straight bribery. Like there are massive moneyed interests that are driving this bus in a direction, or at least they're pushing real hard to keep the bus going in a certain direction. And so, regardless of how this all plays out, whether the markets crash or whether the economy crashes or whether things start, you start getting into boom times, or who knows, like I probably most people listening or watching don't remember the 80s very well, or maybe they do. I don't know. I don't know what our audience trends like, but I remember like in 82, like people were shitting all over Reagan because like the economy sucked, and that was a holdover from the 70s, and they were doing all kinds of stimulus and trying this and that and the other thing. And the thing was, it was, 5 years later, it was boomtown, right? Like it was absolutely going bonkers. And you had all those 80s movies and kids driving around in BMWs and all this kind of stuff, right? Like it was literally boom times, and the boom times lasted all through the 90s, like when we were growing up and turning into 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds. And then obviously that party ended, right? So who knows, maybe this new Trump thing will take us into the next Reagan printing spree, and like kids with polo shirts and BMWs floating around or whatever. But yeah,
We'll find out.
Garaban Turk, yeah, thanks Satoshi Nakamoto. Yeah, that's the big difference in all of this. Like, as much as we want to pontificate about like things that have happened in the past and what tariffs did in the past, or taxes did, or this or that and the other thing, I go, what's the one thing that wasn't around through all of that? Bitcoin. What's there now? Bitcoin. So you go, okay, well, not only is there a fundamental shift in like our tariff policy, not only was there a fundamental shift in like COVID and lockdowns and printing money experiments and modern monetary theory and all this kind of crap. Not only was there the monumental shift in global economics when they bailed out a corrupt banking system, but now we have something on top of that that is very fundamentally different than anything that's existed in the history of humankind.
Yeah.
So for the doomers, I go, probably not. For the dreamers, I go, probably not. Somewhere in between, probably. Is it going to look like something you expect? Probably not. Is it going to be something I think is net beneficial to humanity? Yeah, 100%. So that's kind of where I land on things, but who knows?
Yeah. I feel excited and optimistic about the potential. Granted, I I keep my mind open about who knows, we don't know. But I mean, The future is here. It's just not evenly distributed. Bitcoin is that future. And I think because we have Bitcoin, it forces a reframing of so many of these issues where people are like, but like I'm not maybe there yet, but you can't ignore it. So, like Skateboy mentions, yeah, I mean, so we talked about the decoupling sort of effect, or you just notice little things like that, whether or not it's got legs or not, you notice a difference. And if you start to understand the fundamentals, it starts to shift your mindset about what is money. It's a cure. And we've talked about the metaphor of, inoculating the cancer. The immune system has been sick, and suddenly we've got this shot, this inoculation shot of a cure, and parts of the body are starting to heal.
Yeah,
And the brain cannot ignore the idea that, like, holy crap, you know, I'm starting to feel better over there. What is that?
yeah,
Um, and, and as it absorbs steadily more and more and more, and everything that enters the event horizon stays. And so, yeah, hold your own keys.
yeah.
Um,
Well, that's pretty cool, Garaban. Like it's, I think I could say with a straight face that I think Bitcoin has saved my life as well. Because I was feeling very, very, very hopeless previously when I was sort of mired in the fiat world. Like I would just look around and go like, what is the point of all this? Like how much longer am I going to do this? What am I going to do when And now it's like it's fundamentally shifted my approach to like how I take care of myself, how I eat, how I exercise, how I look at the world every day. And I feel almost Pollyanna-ish sometimes when I'm looking around. I just kind of go, "Oh, I'm not really worried about this stuff."
yeah,
And people go, "Oh, how can you not be worried? Because there's Russia and this and that, and blah 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 blah." And I kind of go, "Yeah," but I think a lot of that just gets better from here on out. Like I
yeah,
don't think to like what Fritz was saying. Like I think this inoculation against cancer, the fiat cancer, is slowly working its way through the system. And like if you are recovering from cancer and you are slowly healing, like it can feel like shit a lot of the time. But if you go like, well, every day I feel just a little bit better and I can walk a little bit further and I can eat a little bit more, you can sort of see where that road leads, right? You go like, oh yeah, eventually I'm going to be back to a place where I'm just like functioning pretty well. And it may not be the same exact life that I had before I had cancer, but now, life looks better. It looks different. I have different perspective and I think that's going to gradually happen with the global monetary system is like Bitcoin is going to keep infusing these little systems and it's going to spread to right now it's in the muscle cells and the muscle tissue of the global corpus, which is us, but then it eventually trickles over to the organs of the state, which are the big corporations and the state and county governments, and it kind of just permeates throughout until it ends up hitting the entire corpus of the world economy, and you go, oh, everything's kind of better now, so this is cool.
Gariban. Wow, Turkey is going through a lot right now, and I don't know all the details about it, but I've seen video of the protests, stuff with the president, the government. Um, I need to look into that, but my heart goes out to the people in Turkey. I don't know what all the details of the strife is, but I've been hearing a lot about it. Massive protests and crackdowns and something. You remind me to check into that because I Turkey's in an interesting situation right now.
Yeah. Well,
And
Oz on Twitter, I think I'm a bear hunter at I'm
oh
a
yeah,
bear.
hmm
Yeah, he's a real cool guy. I think he lives in UK right now, but he's from Turkey, and he kind of posts a little bit about that. But I had an ex girlfriend. Her sister married a Turk and moved to Istanbul, and I remember the last time they had some big hubbub over there. She was writing back on that's all nonsense. It's all like you know, the media is blowing this out of proportion. They're misreporting this and this and this and this. It's always hard to say like what the media narrative is around what's actually happening. I mean, you're there, so you can.
yeah, I'm
I
curious.
know the inflation is catastrophic, but I think the inflation is catastrophic for a lot of sort of G20 countries around the world. Um, and yeah, it's
Yeah,
really weird there right now.
interesting story on that. So Lena Sichi moved to El Salvador.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
the
Is that
little
how you say
hodler,
her name?
Six, Lena,
C
Lena,
Seish? I don't
Seish, is
know.
it
It's a
Seish?
German name. She's German,
Yeah.
right? So I don't know how to pronounce that, but we'll
When
go
I
with it
met
now.
her,
Minasichi.
I was in Miami walking downtown randomly, just taking pictures. Ran into her, and she was with a guy from Turkey, Steve da Bitcoin, and we all followed each other right then and there on Twitter. And anyway, that's the one guy I follow on in the Bitcoin world who's from Turkey, and he posts in Turkish. I have to translate it, but
Uh-oh.
anyway. Oh,
Your
hi.
neighbor.
Evie's awake and with me. This is my daughter. We
Hello.
should probably wrap this up because she's
Yeah,
getting wild. But
it looks like it's time for some lunch, probably.
anyway, I'm gonna look into the turkey situation, and because I know stuff's up. Steve the Bitcoin's posting all the time. He kind of makes it sound like it's a problem. I know they got inflation happening, and hey, maybe Bitcoin can help solve stuff there as well. If you're in Turkey, maybe get Bitcoin too,
Yeah, for
as you
sure.
know.
Well, he
So
already said it saved his life, so
yeah.
uh,
Well, and mindset wise, years ago, like if I was nothing but still like a gold bug or something, there's little hope there other than, well, I got more metal in my safe, what,
yeah,
and how do I use this?
yeah,
Um, it's just different. Being a gold bug, I'd still be kind of grinding away with angst. With Bitcoin, it's more like there is hope.
yeah.
There is hope.
There's light at the end of that tunnel. Anyway, hey, Skate Boy, thank you so much for keeping me honest.
Yeah.
Garrett
Yes.
Vanberg and everybody else that joined us today, thank you so much. I don't know if Travis is still here. But yeah, I guess we're gonna wrap up.
You don't want to see yourself? Okay. I gotta go. She's
All right.
needing some snacks.
Thank
All
you.
right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining us.